Hello, my name is Michael Jones, and I'm here to present to you the first episode of the World Ranking International Football Podcast. It is also the first of a two-part episode released over the course of 2 days, where myself and journalist and author Ibrahim Mustapha will preview all 24 teams ahead of Afcon 2023, which begins on Saturday, January the 13th, 2024. The episode will also feature a very special interview with the Gambia head coach Tom Saintfiet, whose team will be participating against Senegal, Guinea and Cameroon in Group C. If you enjoy what you hear, please follow us on our socials. We're on X, TikTok and YouTube at World Ranking Pod, and on Instagram at World_Ranking Pod. But for now, please sit back, keep working, driving, commuting, running, or whatever else it is you do when you listen to a podcast, and enjoy. So thank you very much for joining me, Ibrahim Mustapha, who is the author behind No Longer Naive, a book on African football. I guess that in itself, writing an African book on football says a lot about your passion for the game on the continent, and so does your Nigeria shirt. But yeah, thanks for joining me.
And Michael, it's an idea that I had sort of brewing in my mind for quite some time, and finally got to do it when we were all sort of trapped at home during that infamous year of lockdown and not going anywhere. So finally thought, put pen to paper, or fingers to note to MacBook or whatever it was, and finally got it done. And it's just the history of African football teams, international teams at the World Cup, from sort of the early beginnings of not being able to even participate in World Cups, being virtually excluded for a number of years, to the slow sort of growth of allowing one team, two teams, five teams, and the growth and the development. Unfortunately, for many people now, if you buy it now, it's only goes up to 2018, so it doesn't have the wonderful story of Morocco in 2022. But if I ever get down to doing an updated version, then perhaps that'll be a chapter there to pop in. So.
Yeah, well, hopefully we don't need another lockdown to bring about those circumstances. But yeah, no, it sounds absolutely fantastic. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your sort of current insights now. And I guess with no further ado, we'll get started previewing Afcon, because there's so many teams to go through since the tournament was extended to 24 teams. And we'll start with the hosts in Group A. Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, they are in a group alongside Guinea-Bissau, Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea. But with Ivory Coast, how does this squad, do you think, compare to some of their golden generation squads? And being the host, they'll be looking to add to their title that they won in 2015.
I mean, certainly they, as the squad appears now, it's almost a new golden generation. They'd have to believe that, and especially going into the tournament as host, there's got to be a lot of expectation on the likes of Kessie, Ibrahim Sangare, Willy Bolly, Serge Aurier, Nicolas Pepe, Jeremy Boga, Haller. These guys are all talented and all shown how talented they are. They're all excelling in Europe and beyond, and fundamentally getting them together for a tournament being hosted in their own country. Like I say, it's almost like a new golden generation, as opposed to compared to the teams of the past. And back then, of course, you had political problems with things like the civil war that were going on back then, that were perhaps impacting how the team would progress. There's always all that lingering thing in the background, and obviously famously you have the famous Didier Drogba speech when they qualified for the World Cup, trying to bring the country together and things like that. But there's less of that now, so I think there's perhaps more harmony within the squad, at least. And so you'd think that perhaps that they would go on to perhaps do something fantastic in the Afcon now. I mean, because they have underachieved pretty much and been really unimpressive since they last won it in 2015. And I think now, if there's any time, this is as good a time as any for them to actually say, like, look, stand up and say, like, look, here we go. Let's actually do something and try and see if we can get another trophy under our belts.
I think it's 2014, isn't it, since they were last at a World Cup? And you mentioned harmony in the squad, and there was a couple of really interesting announcements today regarding the squad. So Wilfried Zaha, he won't be going as part of the squad despite being such a huge name across European football. Everybody remembers him at Crystal Palace, and he's carried on some of that momentum in Turkey with Galatasaray. And then Simon Adingra has been a breakout star for Brighton, one of the next kind of exciting projects that they've got at the moment. He is going, but he's recently picked up an injury. So there is maybe that concern, despite having some good form going into the tournament, just what kind of attack they'll have compared to what kind of potential attack they could bolster.
I think Adingra will be a miss if he doesn't make it. I mean, there's got to be a reason behind leaving out Zaha currently. We sort of have this idea that maybe it will be an all-out attacking sort of strategy for them, but in fact, maybe they might want to shore things up, maybe just pack the midfield, make it look a little bit more solid, and sort of gain that control of games rather than sort of for the gung-ho attacking style. Maybe just avoid defeat first and then crack on from there, basically. So I think, yeah, like I say, with the sort of defensive minded players that they have, or sort of strong midfield players that they have, they'll be a force and they'll be tough to break down more than anything. And then after that, then they can think about the goals, I think.
Well, their first opponents will be Guinea-Bissau. They never qualified until 2017, but they've qualified every time since. But in each of the past three, they've managed just 1 point and nothing more than that. Is it very much of just trying to do the same again, or is there any reason this team has anything in the pipeline that could surprise a few?
They have this one breakout star, perhaps Franculino Djú, who currently plays for Midtjylland in Denmark, and he is their main man at the moment. And I think their all eyes will be on him to perhaps propel them to do something that would do the unthinkable. Perhaps, I mean, they're in there with Nigeria, and they've beaten Nigeria fairly recently in Nigeria during qualification for this tournament. So there will be some encouragement there. Although last time they met, Nigeria won the away from them, but they will, of course, that was a big win for them. It was a famous win for them, and I think that's something that they're going to be looking to sort of apply again once they get to the tournament. Knowing that they can pull off a shock like that and going into the Lions' Den, so to speak, against Ivory Coast. Oh, who knows? They will be encouraged by the fact that they can pull off a shock and perhaps maybe this time do it again.
I guess there's maybe a case of damage limitation in that first game against Ivory Coast when they play their hosts, and see if they can spoil the party a bit. But you mentioned Nigeria, and these two teams will be facing off again. Nigeria have been pitted in that group with the Ivory Coast, but it's a really interesting time for Nigeria. They've only won one of their last 4 games. That was a 3-2 victory over Mozambique, a team they should probably be beating more comfortably. And I guess there's this recurring problem with the national team that I've noticed over a number of years, where you've got this super star-studded attacking line. You've got Victor Osimhen at Napoli. You've got Victor Boniface at Bayer Leverkusen, two of whom have been two of the best strikers in Europe. Can you fit them in a team together alongside the likes of Samuel Chukwueze at AC Milan, Ademola Lookman, Moses Simon, who's always been a consistent player for the national team? How much pressure is the manager coming under Jose Peseiro for this tournament? And do you believe he's got the sort of tools to figure out these problems?
He's under loads of pressure, I think, just because, yeah, like you say, not coming in good form. First 2 qualifying games for the World Cup, both been draws against Lesotho and Zimbabwe, matches that Nigeria should be winning and not even really thinking about, but 2 draws there. And currently outside of the qualification, I mean, it's only 2 games played, but outside of the qualification places for the World Cup currently. And sorry to derail it slightly from the Afcon, but with the World Cup coming up, if Nigeria find themselves in a position where 9 teams from Africa are going to the next World Cup, the expanded World Cup, as we know, and Nigeria not one of them, then that is catastrophic for the country in footballing terms. And the manager's under huge pressure because he really needs a performance now from this team to show that actually, I'm serious about pushing this team forward and, making an impact. As Nigeria is fundamentally underachieved, many would say, in terms of international level. Haven't won an Afcon since 2013. World Cup qualification, second round exits in 2014, and second round exit in 2014, and didn't qualify for 2022. group stage exit in 2018, which was touch and go. It could have gone either way in that final game against Argentina. But yeah, it's not been good. And last Afcon as well, really disappointing performance going out to Tunisia, and also the World Cup qualifier against Ghana. That was that was a real disaster there, because everyone expected Nigeria to go through there and just really let themselves down. And so as this tournament approaches, with the names that you have mentioned, people like Osimhen, who is one of the best strikers in Europe currently at the moment, as you mentioned, and many other players in and around him, they should be doing a lot better. I mean, there is a keeper issue there. I mean, I'm not really sure what's going on there. I'm not sure who's going to be the number one, but beyond that, the team should be strong enough to actually make an impact in this tournament and should be looking at quarterfinals, semi-finals, maybe even beyond.
Just a quick one on them. Have you watched many of the games? And if so, where have they broken down a bit for Nigeria in those moments?
It just seems to be static. I mean, the Zimbabwe game just seems to be a lot of static, sort of sterile possession almost. It's like, okay, we are a talented side. Let's hold on to the ball rather than let's drive and try and make something happen here. When like we say, can't keep going on about Osimhen, but when you've got a striker like that, get the ball to him and just give him the opportunities, give him the chances. The talent is there. People like Wilfred Ndidi and Alex Iwobi, they have the talent to get forward and create these chances, but it just doesn't seem to be materializing at the moment, and it's difficult to explain why.
We'll focus on the last team in the group, which is Equatorial Guinea. Now, they are a team that, unlike Nigeria, have really defied the odds quite positively in recent times. Juan Micha, a really interesting character who is their manager. He took over them ahead of Afcon 2021. And within 2 days, they defeated Tanzania to qualify. He's a former assistant women's manager, the under-17s for the men's and the under-20s before getting the senior job, when he took Equatorial Guinea to the quarterfinals, only losing out to Senegal. And they've been in decent form this year as well. They've won 5, drawn 2 out of 7 games. Suddenly now, they're, for a country that's pretty small and has never really been expected to be one of the big players on the Afcon scene, is there more expectancy and pressure for them coming into the tournament this time around?
I would say perhaps there is, because like you say, 3 tournaments they've been in, and the quarterfinals is their worst performance. I believe I could be wrong there. I think they've had 2 2 appearances, and the first 2 tournaments they were in, everyone suggested that, well, they were joint host the first time and then host the second time they're in, and everyone thought, well, let's see if they can do it away from their own country. And last time, yeah, like you say, quarterfinals last time out in Cameroon, and beat Algeria along the way as well, which is huge. And I'm sure we'll come on to Algeria, but as we knew at the time, Algeria were on this long unbeaten run and then were beaten by Equatorial Guinea in the tournament last time. So I think they're knowing that they're capable of doing that, their expectations will be quite high on them going into the tournament, and they will be thinking that they can get out of the group, possibly through a 3rd place finish, maybe even better.
So now for Group B, where we begin with Egypt, and you can't really talk about Egypt without talking about Mo Salah. And despite Egypt's success in this tournament, Mo Salah's yet to win Afcon. But Egypt have always been able to attract the big coaches, as well as having maybe the best player on the continent in Rui Vitória, who won the Portuguese league on more than one occasion with Benfica and has an 85 win percentage in charge. Do Egypt have the quality elsewhere in the squad to reach the final again, in your opinion?
Egypt, they might have a bit of a older squad, an aging squad, but I think under Carlos Queiroz last time when they reached the final, there was again a case of everyone knowing their jobs, and it wasn't the most exciting side going forward, but they did their jobs, and they got to the final just through sheer just talent as well. They were just unbeatable all the way throughout the tournament until they lost to Nigeria in the first game. But apart from that, they looked pretty resolute and sort of really tough to break down. And I think Rui Vitória perhaps might have a bit more of a forward-thinking, more adventurous approach, and maybe we'll see that unlocks a bit more in this tournament. But Egypt's definitely remain one of the favourites. I mean, obviously having Salah is a big deal, but aside from him, I think they definitely have the talent to be able to get through to the tournament latter stages yet again, and perhaps go on to win it.
Yeah, well, they have Mohamed up front now, which gives them a bit of a different option for how they use and deploy Salah. But their first opponents will be Mozambique. They come in as one of the lowest ranked teams, ranked 111th in the world rankings. They have been boosted actually by the return of Reynildo, a Atletico Madrid left back, and the emergence of Jenny Castano, who's just signed a new long-term contract at Sporting Lisbon in Portugal, and he scored one goal, but played over 10 games for them so far. But Mozambique, as well as having to try and pull off a miracle against Egypt, will be looking to do the same against Ghana, but it might just be something that's slightly more possible. It's very much do or die territory for Chris Hughton at the moment. They've been overshadowed by a number of controversies, not just to do with his and the uncertainty around his future, but training camps before the tournament as well. This isn't new for Ghana. I'm sure you're familiar when they went to the 2014 World Cup. That was very well documented. And it really fears to be one of the factors that could undo the talent and quality that they possess in their squad.
Yeah, it's very funny with Ghana because they were when they sort of emerged in that sort of mid 2000s era, and it's finally started qualifying for World Cups. It's sort of seen as like, right, they have their stuff together almost, that they know that they're going to be more organized, things are going to be better for them, and they're going to progress and maybe become like this super African side that are going to develop through and make an impact on the world stage. But yeah, it hasn't really happened. I think almost the opposite is that once they had players who became like these major stars, it almost served as a bit of a conflict within the setups. You know, I mean, previously you had someone like Asamoah Gyan who has caught all sorts of controversy when he was there, even though he was the gem, the star player. But yeah, and I think on this occasion, they were shocked. They were stunned. I mean, anyone who remembers the last AFCON, they were beaten by Comoros and finished bottom of their group. And it was a shock considering that they would go on to qualify for the World Cup just a few weeks later and then perform not terribly at the World Cup, but I think they would have expected better as well in their World Cup from their World Cup display. But after what happened last time, like I say, against the Comoros, I mean, it's possible it could happen again. I mean, it wouldn't be crazy if they were victims of another shock defeat against one of the teams that they would be expecting to beat and perhaps not making it through the group. Or Kudus has been a fantastic player for them. As yet, not sure what the situation is regarding whether Thomas Partey will be available and fit for them. But they have the players, they have the talent, but it's just about whether they have the sort of mental capacity to keep that all together. And obviously, if Chris Hughton can keep that all together and get them firing in the same direction, then it remains to be seen how Ghana will do. I'm not holding out a lot of hope for them, and I know that not just because I'm wearing a Nigeria shirt right now, but I actually don't think that Ghana have got themselves together enough ready for this tournament.
Yeah, it may very well be an eye-opening experience for Chris Hughton in the same way that it will be for us watching a Chris Hughton team at AFCON. But one of the teams that could also look to upset them, one of them may be Mozambique. Egypt, I'm sure, will be fancying the chances, but the other team is Cape Verde, who have been mired by inconsistency, really. They did manage a really impressive draw this year, 0-0 against Morocco, and they defeated Burkina Faso 3-1, a team we'll come on to in a bit. But it was their joint ever. It actually was the worst result because it was their joint ever worst defeat as a national team at the hands of Algeria this year. They lost 5-1 away from home, which doesn't seem too out of the blue, but it kind of highlights that inconsistency that they've had this year. And if they are looking to spring a surprise, they may well have to sort out their own problems first.
The issue with Cape Verde is that they're sort of perceived as this sort of small nation, but they actually seem to have, just through sort of like their diaspora, have a lot of players to select from. And I think that often becomes a bit of an issue for them sometimes. I mean, they're obviously trying to cast their net further and further afield to see who can potentially qualify and play for them. But I think that almost leads to a lack of consistency, as you point out, within whether the team or the squad and whether they're ready to sort of perform in these tournaments. I think they will probably fancy their chances if they can catch Ghana on a bad day to perhaps probably nick that second spot in that group.
Like you said, they've got quite a few Portuguese-based players. Jovan Cabral, who was once a Sporting Lisbon, he's now at Salernitana. Everybody remembers Bebe at Manchester United. God, that's over 10 years ago now, I think, when he sort of came on the scene and left quite quickly. But he's kind of established a pretty decent career ever since, mainly in Spain. And then they've got Gary Rodriguez. He's 33 now, but I was really impressed with him at the last Afcon. So, yeah, I do hold some sort of semblance of optimism for Cape Verde, but we'll see how they go. And it looks like on paper, it doesn't look the most competitive group. I think there's a lot more to be thought out than what first meets the eye, at the very least. So, to kickstart Group C, we've got a very special interview with the Gambia manager, Tom Saintfiet. Tom has also been the former Zimbabwe, Namibia, Trinidad and Tobago, and Malta manager. I think there's probably a couple others there as well that he could throw in the mix. So we're going to hear all things from him before dissecting the rest of Group C. Tom, really busy period between World Cup qualifiers and Afcon 2023 approaching. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's naturally a great moment for Gambian football. Small country who got back-to-back qualification for Afcon. And as coach, you can be only happy to go to be just a few weeks of a few days in front of such a big tournament.
You mentioned Afcon. I'm delighted that you sat in front of a number of different shirts of some countries that will be featuring in Afcon as well.
The people maybe know a little bit about me, and I coached 10 national teams over the last 15, 16 years. And in the back are the national team shirts. On my right side here, for you left, is the Gambia, the current shirt of the Gambia. On top you see another Gambian shirt, but for the rest you see the shirts of Malta, Trinidad and Tobago, Yemen, Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Ethiopia, Togo, and I'm not sure if I missed, and Namibia, naturally. I think that I mentioned now just 10 countries all over 4 continents.
Oh, fantastic. And I feel like it's best to start with the shirts that we can see 2 of very clearly, which is the Gambia. And yeah, they really arrived in style in Afcon 2021, qualifying for the quarterfinals by defeating Tunisia and Guinea in the process. Looking back on that previous tournament, have you had much time to appreciate the magnitude of the achievement for yourself and the national team? And has that been a factor in helping you prepare for the next edition?
Sure. I mean, reaching that, first of all, the qualification was already a big surprise that time. When I arrived in 2018 in the Gambia, they were 172 in the world and never had qualified for a tournament on senior level. And they not had won a competitive match for 5 years. Their competitive last win was against Tanzania in September 2013. So when I started, no one had really hopes that such thing could be possible. And then qualifying, coming out of the pre-qualification, qualifying as number 1 ahead of Gabon, DR Congo and Angola was already a big surprise. Then making your debut at Afcon and winning against Mauritania, the opening game, then people told me already, board members said, if we lose now every game, it's already a success because we won the first match in history. And there are many countries who never won a game in the Afcon, even countries who go frequently there. But then we kept on getting results. Draw with Mali and then win against Tunisia, and then second round win against Guinea. Only get kicked out in the quarterfinal against the host Cameroon. That was a fantastic experience. And to be honest, at that moment when we got kicked out and the days and weeks afterwards, it felt as a huge disappointment. And that's ridiculous, naturally, for a country who never qualified and reached as debutant the quarterfinal. But we as a team, I had made preparation PowerPoints and videos about Greece becoming European champion in 2004, about Denmark becoming European champion in 1992, and about Zambia becoming African champion in 2012 or 13. I forgot the date exactly. And so we were in that hype from we can do maybe everything here. We can surprise the world. We were also naturally realistic that we were the underdog and that we were a small football nation, but still, when we got kicked out, it took a while to enjoy it. In the beginning, it was really a disappointment to be kicked out, because being at such a tournament and getting further, that is addictive, and you want to stay there as long as possible. But later you see the comments of the international media, you get the feedback from a lot of people, and then you know from you did something fantastic. And we as a team, we enjoyed it, but we couldn't enjoy it for a long period, because even if we were sixth in the last Afcon, we had to play pre-qualification in March 2022 to qualify again for the next Afcon, and that was ridiculous. We were still ranked on the FIFA ranking before Afcon by the worst 8. After the Afcon, we were naturally moved in a better position, but the CAF used the ranking before Afcon, and we had to play pre-qualification against Chad, and we suffered, but we came through it. And yeah, then it gives us now a feeling from we want to be always there. It's not realistic. In the past, Nigeria missed out, South Africa missed out, and a lot of other countries missed out. But it was a big motivation for the staff, for the players. Inside the country, I have to say that it's more a pressure in the way that the Gambian public expect it now as normal to be there, and expect it also even as normal that we reach as minimum the quarterfinal, and why not more? And that's naturally not realistic. We are still a very small nation. We are the smallest in size on the mainland of Africa, and we still have a lot of top countries ahead of us. But yeah, we are in a hype. We try to maintain that, and we try to again get the coming weeks at Afcon some good results.
The ambition appears to be certainly there amongst the people and yourselves, which is fantastic to see. And I guess looking ahead to this current one, you are pitted against two of those teams that you mentioned in Guinea and Cameroon, but also the current holders in Senegal. When you dealt this kind of hand, is it more that you relish these big games, or do you wish for a bit of a simpler route into the knockout stages?
I was in Ivory Coast in October for the draw, and I was making my imagination what would be the perfect draw, and I noticed already before the draw it would be always a tough draw. If you know that, yeah, pot 1 had the big nations, pot 2 had nations like Cameroon, like Ghana, like Nigeria in pot 2, like DR Congo and Mali. So they were not Burkina Faso. They were not really easy opponents in pot 2, and pot 3 had also some tough ones, and we were in the low, but still second lowest ranked on the FIFA ranking. Only Tanzania is worse ranked than us in the current ranking. So we knew it would be tough, but this stuff we didn't expect. Naturally, the current African champion Senegal, our neighbors, Gambian people are asking for more than 5 years when we're going to play them. In history, Gambia won only once in 1966 against Senegal, and after that never got a victory against the neighbors. So it's a very special game as opening game of Afcon, meeting Guinea, who have a top striker, the best striker in the German Bundesliga right now, and who want revanche after our second round match, and meeting Cameroon, who was last year's semi-finalist, Cameroon and Senegal, who played Qatar World Cup. So it's a group of death. Everyone call it a group of death. On the other side, we as Gambia have proven in the past with the results against Tunisia, but also twice a draw against Algeria, a win against Morocco in Marrakesh a few years ago. We are not afraid of the big nations. We respect them. We know that they are the favorite, but we will prepare our tactical plan. And I hope that the coming days, the players, the important players, stay fit, because naturally our group is less. Let's say that the top nations have more alternatives for positions, and that we count on a certain group of players. If 1 or 2 or 3 players drop out of that group, we face more difficulties. But if we stay healthy and fit, I think we can be competitive against all countries, but we will be still the underdog.
Absolutely, and it really makes for such a fascinating group. Just coming on to you a little bit before we maybe discuss a few more of the players and tactics, like you said. You're into your 6th year, I believe, in the post as the Gambia manager now, which is over twice as long as your second longest out of more than the 20 roles. What's been key to your longevity in the Gambia, and do you envisage yourself staying for more years?
Yeah, in the beginning of my career, I started on the age of 24. I had always dreamed to work as national team coach in Africa. And my big aim is naturally going to World Cup. And when I got in 2008 a chance to sign with Namibia, I signed a 4-year deal, but was still quite young, 35 years old, and got several offers and left the ship to go somewhere else. And that was at that time probably a wrong decision, because I came in a circuit of always short-term contracts, 3 months Malawi, 5 months Ethiopia, 3 months Bangladesh. I finished always the contract, but then there was months no competition, and these federations were limited in finances, so they couldn't sign a national team coach for a longer period. And that gave a negative reflection of my name. People said, yes, something is wrong. People saw always the short-term contracts. Is he fired? Is he a problem maker? What's going on with him? So when I got the opportunity with the Gambia, it was a first and 9-month contract. I wanted really the job because I knew, even if they were 172 in the world, that they had much more potential and that I could achieve goals. And I felt immediately home. I'm surrounded by a fantastic federation, a president, a vice president board, a federation people who really support me, who let me do my job, and who are very supportive in and outside doors. I have a top team manager, Usman Drame, who is very crucial in achieving our results. I have a very good technical team, medical team, and I have fantastic players. So I feel really happy in coaching the Gambia, and actually achieving these results make it more nice. I extended my contract that time for 2 years, and then later I extended it for 5 years to August 2026. Until now, I have no sorrows about staying that long, and I don't see a reason to leave. I got the last 2-3 years several offers from the big clubs in African football, the North African giants, Champions League winners. I got also some federations who offered me 2-3 times more salary than what I have in the Gambia. But still, I feel happy, and I learned my lesson of my first experience with the Namibia, where I jumped the boat too early, and also in the past sometimes too eager to move on. Now, when you feel happy, when you have a good work relationship, when you're happy with the staff, the players, federation, I don't see the need at the moment to leave, but you never know. Naturally, my dream is going to the World Cup. It would be amazing if it's possible with the Gambia. But naturally, if one of the major African countries come, you never know. But at the moment, I feel very happy with the Gambia, and the intention is to achieve more the coming years.
That's really good to hear, because you've had this unparalleled success with them in recent times. But we must just say, it's not just the first team that have had this period of unparalleled success. You know, at the under-20 World Cup last summer, the Gambia won their group, knocking out France in the process before a narrow loss to Uruguay. It appears that this is a golden generation for Gambian talent also. Would you just be able to tell me a little bit about the reasoning potentially behind that? And Adama Bojang was a player who really stood out at that tournament as well. He's not properly broke through Stade de Reims yet, but certainly one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, first of all, I think Gambia had the last 20-25 years always a lot of talent. The majority in the last 20 years were players who played abroad. Beginning 2000s, you had Ibu Silla, who played Club Rouge, who played in Holland. You had Serhou, who was in Racing Gang, and you had Idrissa Sonko, who played for Anderlecht or the ESA, but even in England for Walsall and some other clubs. Later on, in 2004, 2005, Gambia under-17 qualified for the World Cup under-17 in Peru. They beat in that World Cup Qatar, and even more to mention, they beat Brazil in that World Cup in 2005. So they had always good talent. In 2007, they qualified again for the World Cup under 20, I think it was. Or under, yeah, I'm not sure about that, but at least I think under 20 they qualified. That time there was already the Omar Colley's, but you had players playing in Willem II, in Belgian Premier League, in different leagues in Europe, all playing. So Gambia had always 20-30 players playing abroad and in European leagues performing well. What's changed now is a very good leadership in the federation, where there's stability, where there's a good technical director who has an eye for development of talent, where there are good youth coaches, local youth coaches with Adama Bojang, with Ablai Bojang, and some other good youth coaches are there. And Also adding to that is that the club development is going very steep up. Since we got these good results, the interest in Gambian players is rising. We have more than 150 players abroad, so clubs see it as a business thing to develop players. Real de Banjul, one of the major clubs in the country, sold more than 50 players to Europe. But there are other clubs like Fortune, Walidan, Milan BK, Falcons, and also lonely academies who are not really clubs like Gambinos, Star Academy, who are settled there, sometimes with European base. Bayern Munich is interested in it. Some Belgian clubs, some French clubs are interested. They're investing in infrastructure, they're investing in development, what makes that there is a growing process of always getting new talent. Gambia is a poor country. A football player in the Gambia earns 30 to 40 US dollar a month, what means that they are very eager to make the step abroad. Clubs are doing great development, federation is doing great development, and starting with these good results 5-6 years ago, it helped naturally the boost, because you get more attraction from foreign investors and from foreign clubs, scouts and coaches to get players abroad. And it's a snowball effect, and we are benefiting of it. And I expect the coming 10 years that Gambian football can rise more.
Thank you very much, Tom. My final question is for anybody who's not watched the Gambia, or maybe not even watched Afcon too much going into the tournament in January. What would your message be to those people who do like football, but maybe just haven't been able to enjoy football in Africa too much?
Yeah, first of all, I think African football is fantastic. It's pure passion. Even without Africa Cup, national team matches in general, players are so motivated to represent their country. They are honored to come and home, and it's nothing about money. It's really about being there, representing your flag, your nation, and playing against each other. The fans are amazing. Naturally, they love their players. They love the atmosphere, and so that's already something to look at. Not only at the Gambia, but at the whole national teams and the whole tournament. If you can see it, watch it, because it's passionate. Plus, if you look to Europe, the last 10 years, but even the last 20 years, the major players in the Premier League, in Italy, they are African players. In France, in Germany, they are African players. So the top players of Europe are mostly African players, and they come all together in such a big tournament as the Africa Cup, what makes it also very high level. And then for the Gambia, I noticed that a lot of people still don't know the Gambia. Some people compare it with Zambia, or don't know where the country is. We are a very small nation, surrounded by Senegal in West Africa, about 6 hours flying from Europe. But a beautiful country, also a tourist country, where a lot of British tourists, but also Belgian, German, Swedish tourists come for a beautiful beach holiday. But our national team has some players who are well known. In England, we have less known players. We have Ibu Adams from Cardiff. We have Ibu Touré, who played for Stockport. We have a few other players who are right now not in the selection, but who play for Swindon and for Wrexham. And there are some Gambians there. But we had Moussa Barrow, who the last years was fantastic in Serie A for Bologna, who play now in Saudi Arabia. Hassan Sissef, who was last years in Lecce, who also play in Saudi Arabia. Omar Colley, central defender, 5 years for Sampdoria, and now playing for Besiktas. So we have really some interesting players, and we have also very young talent. We have Abdoulaye Diallo, a very skillful player who played for Metz in France. Maybe a player who you will see soon in English Premier League, because he's bought by Newcastle. Yankuba Minte, 90-year-old guy who plays now on loan in Feyenoord, who is a fantastic player. So we have a lot of quality, we have a lot of passion, and I think the whole tournament is about the passion for football, and that's what makes African football strong. So I would say don't watch only the Gambia, watch all games, because you will enjoy it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom, and best of luck for Afcon 2023, as it's called. And yeah, I really hope that the Gambia are able to replicate that success that you had, both for yourself and for the country as well.
We're going to try to do our best, and I would say, inshallah, hopefully we can do it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Tom Saintfiet, the Gambia manager. And he mentioned that there's this very special game for the Gambia when they play Senegal. Would you be able to just tell us a little bit about the type of team they'll be facing in Senegal? And despite them having a pretty impressive 2023, not everything's kind of bubbling smoothly beneath the surface?
No, there's issues with it's sort of like an ongoing thing with a lot of African teams. It tends to be, unfortunately, it's issues over things like finances, pay, whether the football federations and the government and all that sort of that links that they have, and basically there's this issues with Aliou Cisse, despite everything he's achieved, is sitting waiting to be paid, allegedly not received the money he's been owed for several months now. And does that disrupt the harmony, or does that bring them together? Who knows with these situations? But what is undeniable is Senegal's quality on the pitch, and obviously as defending champions, they're going to come into this thinking, right, we've got a show, we've got something to show, we're going to defend title. Obviously, had a good World Cup, in 2022 as well. So, of course, went out to England and have a very strong squad that is, again, looking to sort of prove themselves and show that, that it wasn't a flash in the pan last time. There may be some grumbles over the fact that they won the tournament on penalties, but ultimately they won the tournament, and maybe this time around they'll want to show that they can do it without the need for penalty shootout. Perhaps, I mean, you've got obviously Sadio Mane's in that team, but then you got the likes of someone like Nicholas Jackson, who hasn't necessarily performed for Chelsea since moving there this season, but has scored some goals. And I think maybe if he can take that into the Afcon and boost his confidence there, that maybe he'll go back to London a sort of rejuvenated player after his time he's not exactly set the world alight so far there. But maybe the Afcon has come at the perfect time for him, I feel. And even someone like Pap Sarr at Tottenham has been the opposite. In fact, he's had a really good start to the season there. And if he can take that form into the Afcon, then Senegal will be a pretty tough team to beat, along with all the other talented players they have in their side.
Tom mentioned that big game against Senegal, but also there's this grudge match. The Gambia reached the quarterfinals last time, and one of the teams they defeated on the way were Guinea. It's going to be a really difficult challenge for both the Gambia and Guinea to try and get out of a group with Cameroon and Senegal. But they do have one real standout player who's kind of come from nowhere to a lot of people, at least, in the form of Serhou Guirassy, who is, apart from Harry Kane being scoring for fun and is the second leading scorer in the Bundesliga at the moment for Stuttgart. Alongside him, though, the question has to be asked whether the quality is enough elsewhere in the squad for them to cause problems and to try and get out of a group. Because you do think if they were in another group, they'd certainly stand a decent chance.
Well, they have Mariba as well, who's perhaps the last couple of years haven't been too kind to him. He's, was highly touted as, one of the next great things in football. And when he's at RB Leipzig now, not doing terribly badly, but, there was expectation that he would sort of soar. The same applies to someone like Naby Keita as well, who people expected a lot more from him at this point in his career, but it's not really worked out. But those two players, they do possess the quality that you're talking about, and I believe that they could perhaps spring a surprise. I mean, logic would dictate that them and the Gambia are battling for third place in the group, and see what would happen there. But who knows? Both teams are capable of putting up shocks, and they both advanced in the last tournament beyond the group stages, and both will be looking to do the same again, I imagine.
If Senegal are going in as strong as they were in 2022, that will be a tall order. But another former Afcon champion in the group, Cameroon, they've come into the tournament in much more acrimonious circumstances. They've got no Eric Choupo-Moting, another leading Bundesliga striker, although he's maybe not had the same success since Kane's arrived at Bayern Munich. And he was not included in the squad. Rigobert Song, the former Cameroon icon, Afcon winner in the early noughties and key figure for them in the late 90s as well. He was quite evasive in his reasoning. It's not the big sort of high profile, not to say it was a fallout, but we saw with Andre Nana at the World Cup what happened. But there's also no Carlos Baleba of Brighton and Hove Albion, who was signed for a lot of money this time in the summer. And he's a player who I thought would be in the reckoning because he was a part of the same Cameroon Breweries footballing academy as Rigobert Song, Jeremy, Samuel Eto'o. There is that connection. But some key players have been omitted. The Indomitable Lions are in really poor form. They've only defeated Burundi and Mauritius this year. They've lost Andron to Namibia, but also lost to Russia, Senegal, and they've drawn Libya. Could they be the team that do really not produce what they're expected to? And would that mark the end for Song, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's all on Song now because of the last Afcon. They would have been expected, and they performed fantastically well, obviously getting to the semi-finals and obviously third place, but they would have been expected to win that obviously on home soil, and would have been disappointed that they didn't quite get over the line. They had a decent World Cup. It was by no means an embarrassment in the tournament. Beat Brazil, as we remember, their final group game, albeit in the dead rubber. But they'll be coming into this tournament almost like Nigeria under a fair bit of pressure, and hoping that they can actually take the opportunity to sort of step up and say, right, this is an opportunity for us, make a statement, and show that we are the team that people expect us to be.
Well, thank you very much, Ibrahim. But that is it for the first episode of the World Ranking International Football Podcast. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. Our second episode will be released on Thursday, January the 4th, which will be myself and Ibrahim similarly previewing the second half of the tournament, which includes the likes of Algeria, South Africa, Tunisia, Mali, Morocco, and last but not least, Zambia, where we will be joined by their centre-back and Ayr United defender Frankie Musonda, who speaks about his journey with the Chipolo Polo, his relationship with esteemed head coach Avram Grant, and Zambia's prospects at Afcon 2023. Until then, goodbye for now.